welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Lydia and I make faith-based content here on YouTube. If you're new, welcome. I do release new videos every single Tuesday and I hope this episode is a blessing to you and finds you at the right time. If you're coming back or welcome back, hope you're having an amazing one, and I hope that last week speaking about winter, actually if you are finding yourself in one, it encourages you to realize that one, God is not punishing you, and two, there's a purpose to it, and then ours is simply to go through the process and allow God to outwork what He needs to outwork in us. If you're new, we are in the middle of a series just talking about principles of understanding seasons and how to navigate them. What are the purpose of each season? Because God outworks our life calling, our life assignments, and generally our lives, just like in the natural, through cycles of seasons. And each season has a purpose. Each season has its marks of identification. And we need to understand this because we read in Chronicles, from the tribe of Issachar, there were 200 leaders of the tribe with their relatives. All these men understood the signs of the times and knew the best course for Israel to take. When we understand the signs and marks of each season, then we can identify what season we're in, and therefore we can identify the right course of action. And last week we spoke about winter, and today we're going to be talking about spring. Spring marks the transition out of winter into summer. Spring speaks of renewal and new growth. Spiritually speaking, in the Bible, it also was a time of war. The marks of spring, naturally speaking, is that it's rainy season, it's new leaves are blossoming, we see animals coming out of hibernation, and it's a season for sowing. From a spiritual perspective, likewise, it is a time to plant and carry out the instructions that were given to us in the quietness of winter by God. It is also a time for a new agricultural cycle. So spiritually speaking, it is a sign, it's a season of new beginnings, which is exciting, but it can also be dangerous because we all know transitions need to be handled well. The purpose of spring we read in Hosea 10. Be like a farmer who plants good seed. Plant things that are good and right. Then your harvest will be faithful love. Plow the hard ground and prepare it for the Lord to bless you. It is a time for you to turn back to the Lord. Then He will bless you with good things like rain that falls on the ground. As we said, naturally speaking, it's a time we come out of hiding. It's a time where animals come out of hiding. It's a time where things begin to grow. It is a time to plant. But from a spiritual perspective, just like in the natural, in the winter, we were dying, right? The ground became hard. Our hearts can maybe have become hard from the experiences that we experienced in the season of winter. So it is time for us to plow the ground, because in the cold months the soil becomes hard. So it's a time in the winter to prepare for the rain in the spring, to prepare for the rain of the Spirit that is about to be poured over us. We need to plow up the hard ground of our hearts. We need to remove any weeds that maybe are grown without us being aware in the winter. Offense, pain that we haven't dealt with, because part of winter season we experience pain. So any pain that we have not dealt with, that is a time for us to just deal with it, heal from it, because God will not give us our harvest with hard hearts. God will not. We cannot plant in hard soil. It's the same spiritually. And spring is also a time to sow with intentionality. It is not a time to reap. In the winter, we were dying to the old. So now in the spring, as God begins to pour out His rain of spiritual awakening, it is a time for us to sow seeds towards that which He instructed us in the winter. It is also a time where God begins, you'll notice, it's where God begins to bring about new connections. He begins to bring about new mentors. He begins to bring about destiny partners to actually help you with what He instructed you to do, because you cannot do it by yourself. Anything that is godly, we cannot accomplish it by ourselves. We always need destiny partners. We always need mentors. And you see God begin to bring those people for us to help us to align ourselves and to sow intentionally. So how then do we steward spring? In Jeremiah, it says, This is what the Lord says to the people of Judah and Jerusalem. Plow up the hard ground of your hearts. Do not waste your good seed among thorns. What are thorns? Thorns are bad habits that have still clung onto us. So in the springtime, in that transition season from winter to summer where we will experience harvest, we need to break off any habits that no longer serve us. Just like in the winter we were dying to ourselves in our character, now we have to be diligent to be sure that we do not learn any habits of survival, because winter is a time of survival. So the habits of survival are not good for the habits of building, because spring is a time of sowing, spring is a time of working, of laboring. But if we're still having the mentality of survival, it's not going to benefit us. So those habits that we learned to help us to survive winter, we need to let them go, because God will not rain his fresh rain, his fresh spirit of renewal in hard places, in bad habits. So prepare your heart, your thinking for work. That is basically the importance of spring. That's how, because it's a season of working, my friends. It's a season of working. Yes, we're enjoying the freshness. Finally, we can breathe, but it's a season of working. Diligence, diligence, diligence. So towards the harvest expected. You cannot reap. You and I cannot reap what we have not sown. Yes, God is the God of the harvest, but we are the sowers. So spiritually speaking, we need to sow the word in our hearts and water that seed with prayer. And that is not being lazy. Naturally speaking, we are to study and train ourselves in the areas that God has revealed to us that he's going to lead us into, or he's going to open those doors for us. We read in Timothy, work hard so you can present yourself to God and receive his approval. Be a good worker, one who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly explains the word of truth. Avoid worthless, foolish talk that only leads to more godless behavior. Avoid things that will distract you. Avoid worthless talks. Avoid wasting your time. Yes, because winter has a way of making us be less effective, less active. It's kind of hard in the transitional season to go from 0 to 100. But train yourself, as in the first one, be diligent. Train yourself to be a hard worker. Just because God says he's going to do something doesn't mean it's going to happen through osmosis. He still needs us to partner with him by laboring with him. He creates the harvest, but we need to do the labor of sowing so that he can produce a harvest out of what we have sown. And thirdly, faith and patience. We read in Hebrews, patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that he has promised. You will need to be able to stand firm on what God has said to you, because the enemy will come to distract, to attack, and to discourage. Distract. Sometimes we find ourselves doing a whole lot of good things that are not necessarily God. So this is a season where we need to be very wise and intentional to remain in what God has told us to do. Just because something is good does not mean it's God. And and I call this a tactic of the enemy, because he knows if you're someone who's intentional and you want to please God, he cannot tempt you with evil. So what he's going to do to distract you, he's going to distract you with good things that you will easily fall into, because it's good. It looks good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with helping people. But is that what God has told you to do right now? There's nothing wrong with going and volunteering to this, but is that what God has called you to do now? Or God has called you to study? Or God has called you to do the 1 and 2? So the energy and time that you're spending doing 500 good things, as opposed to doing the one good thing that he told you, that is way of distracting. And attack in the sense that suddenly you might find persecution. You're trying to be genuine, and then all of a sudden people misunderstand you, people offend you. That's a way to distract you, so that one, you can keep your heart hard, so that your soil will be tender to receive the seed that God has intended for you to have. And also discouragement, because in the springtime you don't necessarily see anything. You're just working. you've just gone through out of a winter season where you felt like you're dying, and then now you're feeling like you're breathing a sign of fresh air, but at the same time you're just laboring with nothing springing up. So you can easily be discouraged. So stand firm on the faith that, you know what, God is faithful, and nothing that I sow will ever be lost in Him. God will redeem the time that you've lost. God will always give you a harvest of what you've sown. So just stay in faith and stay patient. So remember, spring is a time of transition, and transitions can be tricky because we're going out of survival mode into labor so that we can have something to harvest. Steward them well. Be diligent. Sow with intentionality. Stay in faith and have endurance. Stand firm. Don't run ahead of God. Remember, avoid shortcuts. The longest route to God's promises is doing shortcuts. That's how the devil tried to tempt Jesus, by giving him a shortcut, saying, just bow to me. You don't have to go through the cross. You don't have to go through anything. Just bow to me and I'll give you the world. That was a shortcut that was not going to produce the fullness that it is Jesus' ultimate harvest, which is you and I. Avoid shortcuts. Remain faithful. Stand firm on the notion and the trueness that God is faithful. Spring is a time of working. We don't necessarily see things springing up, but it is worth it. Sow with intentionality, and you will have a harvest to reap. Love you guys as always. Pray for you. Please continue to pray for me as well. Have an amazing one. Bye.